Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. They're going to the Cup. We heard the chant last night. What do you think of the chant? Right away, Harm. I'm going to ask you that.
I
we
love
want
it.
the Cup chant. I didn't like it. I don't know.
Why?
I don't like it.
Why?
Seems desperate. Because that should be reserved for the Stanley Cup.
Shut up.
No. And I'm
what a horrible take.
I'm pro parade for the AHL.
Hockey fans celebrate their team success and making the Calder Cup final. Boo-hoo. No, don't allow the home fans to have fun when they close out the series.
It's fine.
Get out of here.
I don't like it because it should just be for the Stanley Cup. That's all. That's my opinion.
This is such a grandpa take.
I don't know.
Don't let the kids have fun.
No. It's okay. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what the chat says. So far, I see Quads is a hater. And
don't bring logic. Don't bring logic into this. Just rely on vibes, okay?
Okay, fair enough.
Imagine you're in the building, series clinching win, especially coming down from a 2-0 deficit. Who cares? That's a great chant. I love it.
KJ said lame take, Quads. And Rajcraft says, is there only one cup? Okay, I'm outnumbered. I'm officially outnumbered. Maybe it was a bad take, but when I heard that, my first reaction was, okay, I don't love that. Anyways, whatever. The chat is bumping early.
It's called the Calder Cup. It's a cup.
That's true. But you know what? No, I can't move on. I'm sorry. You want the cup. You want the Stanley Cup. Like, I'm sorry. We're talking about the Calder Cup here. This is great. It's great for the players, but come on. Like, what? I don't know.
All right. Just cancel the finals because it's not the Stanley Cup. No point even playing, right?
I'm just saying,
it's not the Stanley Cup.
Chanting "We want the cup" should be reserved for the Stanley Cup. I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Gatekeeping chants now.
I don't know. Maybe I'm totally outnumbered here.
This is one of the worst takes you've had in a long time.
And that's saying something.
And I'm really disappointed because you're a vibes guy. You should be able to understand this.
And I'm really excited about the parade. Like I am.
See, this is what makes no sense to me. On one hand, all of last week you're talking about this parade. You're all jacked up and excited about it. So let me get this straight. The Abbey Canucks don't deserve a "We want the cup" chant, but if they win, they deserve a massive parade.
I didn't say don't deserve. Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say they don't
that's what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying I don't love it from the fans. That's all.
Yeah, so you're saying the team doesn't deserve those chants from the fans, is what you're saying.
I guess that is what I'm saying. And maybe I'm wrong, because now that I say it out loud, I might be wrong. And the chat is giving it to me early. The chat's bumping early, which makes me want to tell everybody about our Super Chat charity partner this season, the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show? Hit us with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Okay, our opening segment, where we're going to talk about what happened over the weekend. And there's other sports that I want to talk about too. We're going to save that for anyone else, but we're going to talk about the Abbotsford Canucks. Our opening segment is brought to you by Greta. By now, you know that Greta is a great spot to watch the big game, but did you know it's an even better spot for your upcoming party or event? If you need a venue for a team building or summer social event, check out Greta. They've got the street food menu. They've got the arcade games. It's always a fun time with plenty of options at Greta. So make it your spot for your next event. For more info and to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Okay, so yesterday, Sunday, and shout out to Brandon Astle because, man, what a call. Were you watching the broadcast, listening on the radio? Where were you?
Listen to the broadcast.
Okay, so I was listening to the broadcast as well. And he was just, and from anyone that was at the game, you know, the energy in the building was unbelievable. And you heard that from everybody that was at the game. I personally wasn't at the game, but the energy at the building at the Abbotsford Center, absolutely electric. We want the cup chants reverberating through that building. Brandon does such a good job, and did last night specifically, such a good job of capturing that energy and making it go out over the airwaves. Phenomenal call. And usually we don't have audio when we play clips. Today, when we play a clip from this game, there are going to be audio involved as well. Now, usually we don't do it for copyright reasons, but also Brandon is just he does such a good job. I want to make sure I started with a shout out for him because, man, oh man, what a game for Abbotsford. What a game for Brandon Astle. You got to put that on the highlight, the demo tape. because last night, we know what happened. Abbotsford was down 2-0 with a minute left in the second period. Arshdeep Bains, who we've talked about already, has been pretty quiet this postseason for a guy who's a big point producer for Abbotsford, especially during the regular season. Been a bit quiet. He scores his first of the game to get Abby on the board. Then it was all Abbotsford in the third. Shout out to friend of the show, Max Sasson, who gives them the lead. 3 unanswered goals. They add an empty netter. A 4-2 victory on home ice to put this one away in 6 games. A big game for Phil DiGiuseppe as well. I'd like to talk to him soon. I think we're going to try to get him on the show. But I was so impressed with that team effort and just coming back. The will to come back in that game was so impressive.
Abbotsford just hit that unstoppable gear, right? Down 2-0, as you alluded to, with just over a minute left. At one point, the shots were 21 apiece. Abbotsford outshot Texas 19-4 the rest of the way throughout that game. It was complete and utter domination. The number of chances that they piled up and heavy, tiring shifts in the offensive zone. They had Texas on the ropes for essentially the entire third period, and that ability to just take a game over in a situation where you're down 2-0 late in a playoff game against a team that generally defends pretty well in Texas. That's a tough obstacle to overcome, but that's what Abbotsford has done this entire playoff run. So it was so fun to see them come through, and a couple of Surrey guys too, Jujar Kara, Arshdeep Bains, and then Max Sasson with the tip for the game winner as well.
And then there was the Whitecaps player as well. That's from Surrey that scored his first goal. What's his name again? I heard it on the radio today.
I don't know. I don't know his name, but you're right. He scored, and he's
Baswell?
from Surrey.
What's his name? Hold on. I gotta find this.
Jivan Badwal. 19 years old, scored his first MLS goal, and
That's
Whitecaps won 3-0.
That's incredible. Yeah, so shout out to Surrey for producing some local athletes that are getting it done for the local teams right now. But you mentioned it, Jujar Kara as well, and we have the goal. I said we'd play it. Let's play Kyra's goal here.
Kudratsev, right wing feed for Smith. Kudratsev going to the net, backdoor pass to Kara, shoots, scores! Jujar Kara, and Game 6 is tied.
Okay, so a couple things, and if you're watching the video version of our show, you would have seen that Sammy Blade just jumped into Jujar Kara and took him down to the ice, and they looked like toddlers. They looked like Atom players celebrating a goal. Guys down on the ice. Kudratsev falls down after coming into the pile as well. That goal tied it up. Then there was Max Sasson, which came later in the game, and here's that one.
Bodies forming in front of the net. Kudratsev takes a shot, tipped wide by DiGiuseppe. He'll gather it around the net though. Canucks still pouring it on. Here's Hirose, the blue line. Wrist shot, scores! Max Sasson! Absolute dominance by the Canucks in this third period. And Money Max give the Canucks their first lead of Game 6.
No, I wasn't there, but one thing I'd be curious to ask players about, and we're going to have players on the podcast as we normally do, is what was the message from Manny Malhotra in the intermission? Because that Abbotsford team came out just absolutely pouring it on. And Harm, you think about the ebbs and flows of a game. What does that third period look like? And it may have been a similar result, but what does that third period look like if Arsh Bains doesn't get them on the board with a minute to go in the second period? And hey, that might be a scary thought for some people, but man, oh man, Abbotsford was pouring it on all through the third period, pedal to the metal, and they got it done.
Well, this is what sort of reminds me of what PDG, when he's been on the show, Max Sasson have mentioned when we've asked what's special or different about this group, especially because they've been a resilient bunch really ever since the second half of the regular season, when so many of their top players were being called up to play in Vancouver, and yet they went on that heater to close out the regular season. And what stood out from their answers was just how calm they are as a group. That starts with Manny's demeanor and how he leads them, and how there's no situation, no matter how uncomfortable a spot they're in during a game, they're able to maintain their composure and poise. And when you think about finding playoff success, whether it's at the AHL level or the NHL level, you have to be able to hold your own and battle back from difficult positions to have success. I mean, look at the Florida Panthers. To get to the Stanley Cup final, a huge part of their DNA is they never get rattled. You think about the Leaf series, for example, down 2-0 in that series, and in Game 3 specifically, down a couple of goals. For them to come back in that type of a moment, and of course come back and win that series, that speaks volumes. Their composure last year, when think about how much pressure they would have been feeling, how uncomfortable it is to blow a 3-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup final, and then they still went out and closed Game 7. That's a huge part of the DNA of any team that makes a run this deep. Is there are going to be situations where, from a win probability standpoint, when you're down 2-0 that late in the second period against a really good Texas team, you're massive underdogs at that point. But it's about still maintaining your cool and finding a way to tap into that next level gear, and that's what this Abbotsford team has so consistently been able to do.
And we keep seeing it. We keep seeing it from them. We're going to see it, hopefully, in the Calder Cup final, which goes down on Friday. We're going to do a series preview show as well, but we're not doing that. We're still looking back at the Western Conference final that was, as the Canucks emerge as Western Conference champions. Let's bring in our guest today, Dave Hall, who joins us courtesy of our friends over at Pacific Toyota Dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. An SUV packed with plenty of space, the BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. It's backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota, and if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get a $5,000 incentive, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X LE all-wheel drive from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Dave Hall joins us now, the normal author of the Farmies. Dave, how much did it kill you not to get to write about last night's game?
Oh, I know, right? The one game I missed, it was just electric. Yeah, it would have been great. But as always, Cody does a fantastic job. So it was just as good to read it as to write it. So,
what were your main takeaways from not only last night but the series as a whole?
Exciting. That was a jam-packed series. It was getting a little nerve-wracking there. Like, I got to credit, right off the bat, I got to credit Magnus Hellberg. Like, he came in relief in Game 4, and he gave Abbotsford some work there. So, it came down to the wire, but you could just, I don't know, watching those highlights of those goals, it just felt like that second goal when they were celebrating and everyone was jumping on each other, you just kind of that entire third period, you just kind of felt like it was going to go their way, which was the complete opposite to the first half, right? Like the first half of the game, it was kind of nerve-wracking where they were down 2-0. Magnus Hellberg was just stopping everything. They just couldn't get anything going, to completely swap to the exact opposite, where when they score those goals and they're celebrating like that and the barn is rocking like that, you just kind of had a sense that they were going to shut it down, right? So, and that was just kind of the series. It was exciting. Every single game had its ups and downs, its plot twists, and its goal scoring. So it was a great series, huge clutch victory for them.
In your mind, what changed late in the second through till the third period that allowed them to take that game over?
Well, I think for starters, they just needed that one. Like I think you were just alluding to it. I think their willingness to, or their ability to get unfazed by being down in that situation, that's huge. So that's first and foremost, like for them to just continue on, just play their game, not get too down on themselves, and that's a huge goal by Archdeep Bains right there. He scored his first goal of the Calder Cup playoffs the game before, so monkey off his shoulder and the floodgates open, right? And so just to have that one goal in the bag now to come in. I mean, like you already mentioned, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for what Manny had to say in the intermission, but I just think that was it. Just play their game. The goal helps, of course, but I just think overall, just being resilient, not getting down on yourself, and just continuing to clutch on, and that's just what they did. So,
who do they need more from? They had the past series. Who did they need more from? And then looking forward a bit, who does this team need more from right now?
Well, it was nice because my answer before game 5 and 6 would have been Archdeep Bains and Max Sasson. I actually thought, I've said this a few times on Rink Wide if you've watched it, I actually thought Arshdeep Bains, yes, statistically he wasn't putting up goals, but I actually thought he's been playing well. He's been racking up assists and he's also been driving plays. So I've actually thought he's been playing relatively well, aside from not scoring any goals. But I thought Max Sasson had a lot more to give, just because, based on how high of regard I place him in. And so I thought they were two guys that needed to step up, and I think those are the two guys that did step up. Like Max Sasson, he may have been the best player on, like, his entries last night. Like, once he gets going with that speed, it's just something else, right? And so I think those were two guys, Phil Di Giuseppe, basically those veterans that they needed to rely on, I thought really stepped up yesterday, and that's how they got it done. Even a guy like Jujhar Khaira, who was a little bit quiet for not only the series, but pretty much the playoffs, I thought he stepped up too. And so I think going forward, it's time for Jonathan Lekkerimäki to probably step back into the lineup, and they're going to need some offense from him, right? Like, he's a sharpshooter. Yeah, he's a rookie, but he's a goal scorer. They need a little bit more goal scoring, and he's a guy that he's going to need to slot back and somehow find a rhythm here.
We've talked a lot about Victor Mancini, Baines just now, some of their other forwards. Have we given enough credit to Kirill Kudryavtsev for how impressive he's been as an AHL 21-year-old rookie, not only in the regular season, but now in the playoffs as well? Yeah, in and out of lineup a couple times just because of how deep that blue line is. But in that Texas series, it really felt like a continuation of some of his previous playoff form, where his poise, his composure is just so precocious for his age.
Absolutely. And he's just one of those guys that he's not, the most sexy player out there. Like, he's not going to steal headlines. Sometimes you go a game without even realizing, without him stepping up in any particular way. And that's a compliment in this sense. Like, he just doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. I mean, he co-leads the entire Calder Cup in plus minus right now as a 21-year-old rookie. Like, I believe he's only been on ice for 2 5-on-5 goals this entire Calder Cup run. So it's just, and shout out to Cody Severson for those stats, by the way. But it's just been an incredible run, and he was absent for 2 or 3 games in the previous round, and in those 3 games, you can just kind of see that the Canucks were kind of struggling to get that puck out of the zone in transition. He's so smart. He's so calm and poised in his own zone that he just makes transitioning the puck look like a piece of cake. And from a 21-year-old kid who's not he's not the biggest kid on the ice either, and so for him to be that calm and collected in a Calder Cup playoff game, and say what you will about plus minus, but it is a stat, and it does show well that he's only been on the ice for 2 5-on-5 goals against. And so I think he's been as underrated as they come, and I know it's going to be, it's one hell of a push up in Vancouver for next training camp, so I don't expect him to be, on the main running, but don't sleep on this kid to get a cup of coffee at some point next year, because he's just been as smooth as possible.
Do you want to talk some more about Jonathan Lekkerimäki? Because there's a lot of reaction in the chat right now about Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Is he going to get in? Is he going to get in here in the final? Was it a matter of a reset? Because he's a really interesting one for me, because the way I look at it is, okay, what was the conversation around him all season was, he'll have an off season to go put on muscle, to go get ready. Now, all of a sudden, he's had the longest season of his life. He's never had a season that went this long. Yep. And now his off season is going to be shorter as a result. So for him to go put on that weight, he's going to have less time to do it for a training camp. What do you think of Jonathan Lekkerimäki's situation right now heading into the Cup final?
Well, you're right. And I think that has to be taken in consideration, right? We're talking about a very young kid who's never played North American hockey, let alone a Calder Cup, finals run. So he's going through the motions right now, and he's had one long season for him. And so, you have to give him a little bit of leeway in that case. But at the same time, I personally see this as a bit of a reset, just based on what we've seen from Manny Malhotra this entire season. I could see him, now that the series is over, bit of a reset. We go back, he slots back into the game 1, and we go from there, and we just try to ease him back in. But that being said, Klimovich has also played well in his absence as well. So, if you're going to have both of them, they kind of play similar styles right now for what the team needs them for. Where are you really going to put Lekkerimäki when Klimovich has been playing so well? So I personally think Lekkerimäki comes back in, but you're right. He needs to pack on some weight. That's been evident. He has been pushed around. Not only has he been pushed around, he looks a little bit hesitant there, like which we didn't see earlier in the season. Like, although he wasn't laying out big hits, he wasn't necessarily afraid to get into the corner and kind of muck it up a little bit. Now we're kind of seeing a little bit of hesitancy in his game. So I think I still think he slots back in, but yeah, he's going to need some work. And it's a good lesson for those who, want to just assume these kids are just going to instantly slot in the Vancouver top 6, right? Like he's a work in progress, and I still think some AHL time next year is probably in the cards.
What can you tell us about the Charlotte Checkers? And as we preview this cup final, who is the perceived favorite?
They are coming in extremely hot. They've won 8 straight. They've now swept the back-to-back Calder Cup final and champion as well, the Hershey Bears. They swept Laval, who was the best team in the AHL this year. They're coming in hot. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for Abbotsford, but at the same time, they actually had pretty similar stats. They're pretty stacked up even. They've got a couple ex-Canucks. They've got Zach Dalpe and Aidan McDonough, who are both injured, so they won't be playing, but they're in the lineup. You got William Lockwood, that old speedy bottom 6 guy. So they have some players, and their defense is really good. They got Capo Kapanen in net, who's played very well this Calder Cup. So it's going to be a tough challenge, but they stack up quite well. There's no real way to look at them and stack them really, because they've never even come close to touching each other in a regular season. So we'll see how it goes. But overall, it's pretty even. I would give Checkers probably a little bit of an edge, although they're going to come in rusty, right? They've already been off for about a week, so they're going to have almost 2 weeks off, while Abbotsford's running a real big high. Yeah, they only get 4 days off, but they're generally healthy and they're rocking right now. So it can go either way. I'm giving the slight advantage to Charlotte right now, but only because of their 8-game winning streak right now.
It looks like the betting markets agree with you, because I quickly looked it up on Bet365, courtesy of our friends over at Bet365. Abbotsford, the underdog to win the series at plus 105. Charlotte, the favorite at minus 135. Yeah. So you're right, an edge for the Checkers there, but some interesting stuff to look forward to in that series. Dave, before we let you go, and sorry, we're running a little long, I guess, but I did want to ask you, when it comes to this Abbotsford team, like, how much do you think it played into the fact that you just brought it up, they haven't seen Charlotte, they hadn't seen Texas either? What do you think that added to the series between the Stars and the Canucks, and what do you think it might add to the Canucks and Checkers series?
Yeah, well, I think initially it probably benefited the Abbotsford Canucks, because Texas came in with a couple goal scorers that were lighting it up. And they had to make some adjustments midway through the series, because they came in. I don't think they were ready for their, defensive shutdown ability. Abbotsford plays a pretty stingy defensive game when they need to. And so I think it may have taken Texas off guard a little bit. And so they had to make some adjustments, and credit to them, they did. And so they ended up making it, a pretty good series. But I just think, there's so much unknown that goes into the series. Yes, you watch tape. Yes, you look at systems, but I just think there's just a lot of unknowns to go off of. And so, it takes a game or 2, even 3, to kind of fill each other out. And, that's when the coaching comes in, right? That's when those adjustments are made. And so, yeah, it's going to be, it makes a bit of a crapshoot for the first half of the series, in my opinion. And so it just makes for interesting hockey, to be honest, back and forth.
Is there a player that we haven't been maybe talking enough about in Abbotsford during this run that you want to spotlight? Or maybe it's not even a specific player, but an ingredient to their success that you want to spotlight?
I hate to repeat, but I think it is Kirill Kudryavtsev. I not to just piggyback on an answer I already gave, but I just think he's flown so under the radar. And I just think there's so many, for the first time in forever, the Canucks have so many defensive prospects in the helm right now that I feel like he's one of the players that is kind of forgotten about. I mean, we're talking about a 7th round pick, right? In his first year in the American Hockey League. And so I think he's just a player that I think people need to start thinking a little more, he might be a player, right? He might not just be a 7th round gem. He might be a player, or he could just easily be, a trade chip that's, boosted his stock a little bit during this playoff run. But I think Kirill Kudryavtsev is someone that if you're watching, if it's your first time watching an Abbotsford game, really pay attention to number 59, because you even see in the first 2 goals, what's the common denominator in those 2 goals? Kirill Kudryavtsev taking up the puck and transitioning into the own zone. He's just so calm, and he's a real big distributor from the back end. And I just think it's really lost on the Abbotsford Canucks when he's not on the ice. And so I just think he's a guy that's flown under the radar, and he needs to start getting some flowers.
Okay, last one, Dave. This comes from a regular listener to our show named Karn. He said Klimovich is playing with confidence right now. If he keeps it up, is there a world where he's pushing for an NHL spot by training camp, or am I too hopeful?
I think it's probably a little bit hopeful. Yes, he's played well. He scored that big goal. I mean, we've talked about this many times. Like it's very clear that Klimovich is a confidence-driven kind of player that needs to be engaged. I already mentioned he was in the bottom six, and it just doesn't work when he's getting very little minutes and he's just not in positions to score, because when he's on, it's when he's shooting the puck, he's getting good minutes in the top six and on the power play. He needs to be kind of put in those positions. And so, yeah, he's one of the players that has impressed in the last 3 games, but he's also a player that had the kind of exact opposite effect earlier in the playoffs, right? He's just a little bit inconsistent, and so it's all about consistency. The plan, like in my eyes, the hope is for me is that he comes into training camp in Abbotsford next year, gets a nice top 6 role again, and continues this on, and like gets that confidence, and then maybe earns a spot. But I think earning a spot at a training camp is probably a pipe dream at this point. I just think there's too many inconsistencies in his overall game that need to be ironed out. And I think it could happen? Not in training camp, but I think he could get an NHL taste at some point. I just think training camp is probably a pipe dream at this point.
Dave, great stuff as always, my friend. We will chat with you soon, and we'll be reading along on the Farmies for the Calder Cup Final.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
There he is, Dave Hall. Read his work over at CanucksArmy.com. Okay, before we go any further, let's tell everybody about the Vancouver Whitecaps, who are unbeaten in 11 straight MLS games with a win against Seattle yesterday. The 11 straight wins is a club record. Or no, excuse me, not wins. The 11 unbeaten games, okay, because there's draws in there too. It's a club record, okay? Caps are tops in the West and in the league. They head back on the road this weekend where they are also unbeaten. Kickoff in Columbus is Saturday at 4:30 p.m. The Caps then come back home to host San Diego FC for the very first time on Wednesday, June 25th. Kickoff for that one is at 7:30 p.m. For tickets, visit whitecapsfc.com/tickets.
Welcome to Vancouver and to BC Place, the home of Jesper Sorensen's Vancouver Whitecaps FC.
Brian White leaps up, Sebastian
All right, I want to talk about this, Harm. This is an article over at CanucksArmy.com today, courtesy of Stéphane Roger. 4 reasons the Canucks could be sitting on an already complete trade. Now, earlier, I think it was last month, some point in the offseason, the question when we heard about, it's going to be such a busy offseason, the question I got was, well, when can the Canucks start making trades? And the answer to that was anytime they want. After the trade deadline, you can make all sorts of trades. There's only playoff implications when you make a trade after the trade deadline. In fact, you can make trades after the trade deadline. Those players just can't play in your playoff lineup. But shocker, the Canucks aren't in the playoffs, so they could have made trades at any point. They could be making trades right now, but they're not. Typically what happens, and this happened last year as well, you remember the Markstrom trade, for example, is kind of what kickstarted everything. That didn't happen until, I think it was game 5 of the Stanley Cup final between the Panthers and the Oilers. Now, that was also because that final was running all the way to, I believe, the 25th or something like that. It was later than this Stanley Cup final is going to run. So the Canucks could do trades right now, but typically what we see is that there's an understanding and agreement between general managers and really the league that they're not going to make trades during the Stanley Cup final. Sometimes it happens, like last year, it kind of had to happen because teams just had to get their stuff done, had to get their ducks in a row. But the short answer is the Canucks could make a trade at any time. And given how much Jim Rutherford talked about them needing to make a trade, it wouldn't be a surprise to know that there's already one that they either have very far down the line in the works or is just basically done and they're just waiting to announce it with the other team.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that they're likely sitting on a trade that's already done, but I would expect them to already be pretty far down the process as far as intel gathering, kicking tires on players that they're potentially interested in. The draft combine in Buffalo is always the first key moment of the offseason. I went there 2 years ago and I got a little sort of close-up window into exactly how things operate. It's funny. So they have the combine testing at the Harbor Center, and then they have at the hotel that all the teams and prospects stay, they have this little restaurant with a view of the city with view of Buffalo and some body of water there too. Beautiful little restaurant. But for those couple of days, it's a revolving door essentially of GMs, prospects, agents, high-level executives just filtering in and out constantly. And so what you do as a media member is you just hang out by that restaurant pretty much all the time during the day, and you get to see like this GM sitting with Pat Brisson and that executive talking to this other agent, these two GMs talking to each other. You see a lot of these in-person conversations happening, that it's not that deals are already happening and teams are necessarily deep on trade negotiations, but it's a lot of feeling things out and getting a sense of what a team's priorities are, their objectives, how they feel about certain players. Like I bet you the combine is where, for especially for teams that, let's say, have key RFAs and UFAs for that matter, that they're trying to get deals done, this is going to be important to get a sense of where exactly they're at, right? A team like the Rangers trying to figure out what to do with Keandre Miller. Do they re-sign him to a big extension off of his down year? Do they trade him? The Wild with Rossi, the Sabres with Peterka and Byram, on and on. This is the setting where a lot of those seeds are planted. And especially now that the draft is virtual, the combine is even more important. And so that just wrapped up recently. And now that the draft is only 2.5 weeks away, you'd especially expect the Canucks to be diving deeper and deeper into their sort of pro scouting and research, because you'd expect that they want to leverage that 15th overall pick as a trade asset. And you've got a clear deadline where you have to be able to find a deal for that before the draft.
And we have people in the chat saying, oh, well, Alvin and Rutherford weren't at the combine. Look, they were busy, okay? But Cami Granato went. They had Cami Granato there. They had some scouts there as well. So it's not like the Canucks are not going to make a trade because, they forgot about the combine and they decided, we're going to pass on this one. We didn't know it was happening, so we're not going to be able to make anything happen. The point is, and I think one of the points you made that I think is really what I'm trying to say is that, like, at this point, the Canucks, if you injected Jim Rutherford truth serum, actually you don't even need to. If you just asked Jim Rutherford which player that they'd be targeting, he'd be able to give you an answer right now. Like, I think the Canucks know who they're getting, or they have it down to like a list of 3 to 4 names of what they're
also
going to cost.
This is when you'll, just as important as zeroing in on who you might be able to get, you're going to get a sense of who you're not going to be able to get.
Yeah.
Whether it's certain trade targets that teams say, well, we're not making this guy available, or even for agents, right? Yes, the market technically opens on July 1st, but teams, there's so much soft tampering going on, and teams know realistically which free agents are actually going to make it to market, which free agents they actually have a realistic chance of landing versus which ones are sort of a pipe dream. So just as important as zeroing in on who they're going to get, the list also just gets filtered down because you inquire on certain guys, you talk to agents, and you figure out who you're realistically not going to be able to get.
With the Stanley Cup Finals, the last date it can be, if it goes to 7, is June 20th. And that gives a week before the draft. That's way more than it was last year. And again, I know it's only really like 3 or 4 days, but that matters. I think the first trade last year, the one I was talking about, only happened on like June 21st, the first significant trade. So that was last year during the Cup Final. It's going to be busy. It's going to be a busy next couple of weeks. It would seem. Might be quiet this week, but I think next week is when we start to see some stuff.
Also, another reason that there's no urgency to immediately pull the trigger, perhaps, is maybe there's a prospect or two that's down in Abbotsford playing in this Calder Cup playoff run now, and you don't want to you don't want to subtract a player or create a distraction or ruin sort of what's going on there.
Yeah, great point. Really good point. And we had someone in the chat asking if they're holding out Jonathan Lekkerimäki for trade reasons. Not at this time of year. Manny Malhotra is trying to win a championship, and Jonathan Lekkerimäki hasn't been playing very well down in Abbotsford. Okay, let's get to anyone else, which is a presentation of the Vancouver Canadians. The Seas are back at the Nat starting tomorrow for a 6-game set with Spokane. It's the dog day of summer at the Nat tomorrow, where you can bring your pup to the park. There's a nooner at the Nat on Friday the 13th. First pitch is at 1:05 p.m. Perfect time to get your weekend started just a little bit early. And on Saturday, it's Blue Jays Day. The weekends with a White Spot Family Fun Sunday. Bring the kids and watch them run the bases post-game. For tickets, call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. Okay, Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final goes tonight, Harm. I must say, and look, I know people have different teams that they're cheering for in this one. Can we all just agree that this might be, from an entertainment perspective, the best Cup Final we've seen in quite some time? Like, I can't remember this much skill, this much tenacity, just everything that we've seen right now. And of course, you've got the best player in the world in Connor McDavid playing in it, so that helps. But this is way more entertaining than last year's Cup Final.
I mean, last year's Cup Final was really good too, but this is leveled up a notch. The dramatic back and forths, the pace, the intensity, the hatred that these two teams have for one another, the gamesmanship, the key moments too, like the Sam Bennett interference. That's what you love too. A little bit of controversy. It's brought absolutely everything to the table. And how about Brad Marchand turning back the clock at age 37? He's tied for the second most 5-on-5 points in the entire playoffs, behind only Connor McDavid, which is pretty crazy and incredible. The fact that he's a near point per game guy playing on Florida's third line without first unit power play time is just unbelievable. His stock is definitely going up.
What a
heading
pickup.
into free agency.
What a pickup, Harm. What a pickup. And here, you want a free agent prediction? Write it down, Jacob. Get your sheet out. Free agent prediction, Brad Marchand. You just said his stock's going up for free agency. Brad Marchand signs a deal that's way lower than what he could have gotten on the open market just to stay in Florida. Book it. Write it down. That's happening. Guarantee it.
We'll see. The Panthers are in an interesting spot because they've got $19 million of cap space this summer. They're going to have to partition some of that towards Bennett. Ekblad wants to stay too. He had that quote about, I bleed for this team. I've given my body for this team. Dude wants to stay in Florida. And then now you've got Marchand too. Realistically, you can't sign those three guys plus replace Nate Schmidt's spot on the blue line because he's a pending UFA, and sign a backup goaltender because Vanecek's a pending UFA, and sign a fourth line center, which again is another pending UFA spot. You can't fill out all those depth spots and sign all three of Bennett, Ekblad, and Marchand unless you're moving out significant salary. So maybe a player like Evan Rodriguez, you're able to ship him out. But even then, I would guess at this point, it's not impossible, but I'd say it's more likely than not that Florida will only be able to retain two of those three guys. And Marchand's probably number 3 on the priority list.
That's fair. That's fair.
So we'll see.
I think Sam Bennett's the one that ends up leaving. Like, Sam Bennett's going to get a lot of money from some team. I think Sam Bennett signs with Toronto or Calgary. I think it's going to be one of those two teams. I'm going to say that. I know we already have written down.
Well, this is
my Calgary Bennett prediction.
I mentioned you can glean a lot from the combine. James Myrtle had a piece up at The Athletic today, just gathering a little bit of intel because he was at the combine. The sense he got was that the league is expecting, and teams and agents are expecting Bennett to stay in Florida. So that's an interesting sort of development. And the other thing to keep in mind with Marchand is he's never gotten the bag.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been underpaid. His last contract in Boston, it was a lucrative deal, but it was around a $6.1 or $6.2 million cap hit. He's been underpaid for a long time, and this is his last chance to really cash in. So as appealing as it could be to stay in Florida and that lifestyle and playing on a winning team, if he gets his cup, would anyone blame him if he just wants to cash in and ride off into the sunset with one final payday?
No, absolutely not. So he scores the goal, obviously, that you just mentioned. Roberto Luongo tweets out favorite player about Brad Marchand, and Yeah, I'm sorry, but all these Canucks fans that are like, oh, don't cheer for the Oilers, you're cheering for Brad Marchand at the end of the day. And I need you to come to terms with that. Yeah, favorite player of all time was the tweet from Luongo. It's a good tweet. But you're cheering for Brad Marchand, folks. Let's not let's get off the high horse there when you're saying, oh, how could you ever cheer for the Oilers right now? How could you cheer for the only Canadian team in there? Okay. Yeah, KJ said this. These playoffs in general has been on another level. They have been. And the hockey was really good this season. The hockey's been really good in the playoffs as well. Do we have anyone else's? I don't think there's anything in the chat. People are a little tired today on a Monday. So it might be a short show today. I think I'm going to be with Irfan Ghaffar tomorrow or Wednesday. We haven't really decided which day we're going to do, but you're going to be away tomorrow. We might do a show just on Wednesday, and I'll have Irf, so you might be gone 2 days, but we might not do a show tomorrow. I don't know when we're doing a show. It might be tomorrow with Irf. I think it will be. We'll see. I'm hoping we can get an Abbotsford Canucks player. I'll be honest. That's what it's kind of hinging on. If we can get an Abby interview, we'll do a show tomorrow. But that's all I had for today. I didn't have anything else in my notes. Anything you want to get in?
I don't think so.
Excellent. Jacob, did I have anything that I said remind me about this and then I forgot?
No, for once you did not forget about something.
Did you mention something about you wanted to talk about other sports or
the BC Lions? Yeah, the BC Lions.
Yeah.
That was very fun. The Snoop Dogg concert was the best one out of the 3 I've been to. I went to LL Cool J, went to 50 Cent, went to Snoop Dogg. I love 50 Cent. 50 was there just there to get a check. Like, he came in a car that drove him right onto the field. He left in that car, and that car went to and from the airport. Like, he didn't get out to do anything else. Like, he just to and from the airport, and he hopped on his private jet and left. Snoop Dogg, like, LL Cool J was performing like it was the last time he'd ever performed. Dude was like sweating his ass off up there. It was unbelievable. But Snoop Dogg, 60 years old, I could not believe how good this guy was. Like, just and at first I was like, oh, like maybe he'll lip sync, maybe he'll, be a little lazy up there. No, he was also performing, not like it was gonna be his last performance like Cool J was, but he was unbelievable. I was really, really impressed with Snoop Dogg. It was a really good show, man. It was really, really good. And I really, really liked Snoop Dogg's performance. The Lions kind of started that game really crappy. A bunch of people left, but
they're great in the second half. Really good in the second half. Yeah.
Came alive in the second half. And we're hoping to get the Lions back as a sponsor, which that's not why I'm talking about them, but we've had the Lions on in the past with us, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. The second half of that game was spectacular. Did you go to this one? You've been to the other one.
No, I went. Well, I went to the 50 Cent one.
Okay.
I wasn't at LL Cool J, and I wasn't at the one this year, but I love the 50 Cent one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I enjoyed 50 Cent, but man, Snoop Dogg was another level. You never know how invested artists will fully be, because, for example, 2-3 years ago, I went to a festival in Montreal. It was pop, hip hop, rap, a little mix of everything. And for example, each artist would have, especially the last couple of headliners, would have an hour slot for them available. And by far the worst was Lil Wayne. He was headlining for one of the nights. He came on the stage like 45 minutes late and did 15 minutes and was off. And he only played one of his most famous songs. Everything else was like, we don't really like, they're just random songs off his catalog, where it's like, okay, dude, if you're going to show up 45 minutes late and you're only going to be on the stage for 15 minutes, at least play your best songs, make it the best 15 minutes everybody's going to get. But he didn't even do that. And he caught a lot of hate for that. But then you'll have other artists that you can tell, pour everything into it. And you can tell they care about it way more than just the check. So I'm glad Snoop fell into the latter category. Dude, Snoop, they couldn't get him off that stage. It was so funny. He was like, I'm going to sign a football and throw it into the crowd. So he signs a football. And hey, these were CFL balls. I don't think he's ever held a ball that size in his life. But he was just going to do one and throw it into the crowd and let whoever catch it. Then he saw there was a group of kids like right in front of him. So he like calls out, he's like, hey, I want the little girl to have it. And then they put her up on the Jumbotron. It's like this 3-year-old girl holding this football that's the size of her. And for those that don't know, Snoop Dogg is a big fan of his grandkids, and he talks about his grandbabies all the time. It's hilarious how much that, like, go watch any Snoop Dogg interview over the past like 5 years. That's like all he wants to talk about is his grandkids and writing songs for his grandkids. He does have some family friendly songs because he wanted his grandkids to have something to listen to. But anyways, what I'm saying is, then he gave out another football to another kid, and then at the end he was like, all right, I'm gonna throw this to the upper bowl. So from the stage in the lower bowl, he like takes off all his rings, he takes off his sunglasses, and he chucks the thing up there, and he actually got it all the way. Like, I was like,
that's really impressive.
I was like, dude, this is bold to do, because like that was a really good performance, and you could finish it by not being able to make that throw. It's a really long throw, and he's throwing it up, and he nailed it. He got it right to the person that was in the first row of the upper bowl.
If I'm not mistaken, he played like high level high school football back in the day, and his son, I think, played NCAA Div 1 football. Like,
yes,
he comes from a sporting background for sure, and we all know he's a huge hockey fan as well.
Yeah, exactly. I really enjoyed Snoop Dogg. I like the Lions game. Just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Okay, anything else, gentlemen?
Nope.
There was a couple anyone else's that I dropped into the chat, but I don't know if we can get to them before we move on.
Rajcraft said, do you think the Canucks can improve this offseason without trading their first? They can improve, but not significantly enough. Not in the way that they want to improve. They're going to have to trade their first to improve. Do you agree?
Yeah, or they would have to move some of their top prospects, which you'd rather trade the pick than some of your prospects who are closer to being NHL-ready contributors.
We got this one from Cam Horwath in the chat, who said, honestly, there's a ton of rumors about a Morgan Riley deal. I'm assuming to Vancouver. Personally, I don't like it, but what are your guys' thoughts? I don't think you should touch Morgan Riley with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, I don't see this happening. His game has fallen off. He is overpaid on that contract right now, doesn't drive enough offense. He can still move the puck, but put it this way, he's not elite offensively, and he's below average defensively. I don't really see a fit for him, especially on that on the left side of the blue line, eating up a lot of money. I don't really see the fit there.
Likewise. All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by our friends at, you guessed it, Bet365 futures markets. What are we touching? We are taking to win the series, the Calder Cup final. Actually, you know what? We're going to save that. We're going to do an NHL bet tonight. We're going to do, oh my gosh, the underdog. Somehow underdog. Edmonton Oilers. You can get it at plus 120 on the money line. I am taking that. The Panthers at minus 140 heavy favorites tonight. I am taking Oilers money line plus 120. That is our Bet365 bet of the day. And if you want to get on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs, Bet365 has got you covered. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line, you can even bet on futures like series winners, conference champions, the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official part in their Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 90 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we will wrap it up there. For my co-host Harmon Dial, our technical producer Jacob Bazar, our thanks again to Dave Hall for joining us. My name is Dave Quadrelli. Thanks so much for the episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the CanucksArmy YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.